See? Hang on. It's happening. We are live. Hi. I'm still pregnant. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to hide my supportive pregnancy strap, but I'll just show you. Are you ready for this? We've reached that phase of pregnancy, okay? I'm not proud, but I need a supportive medical strap to hold me up, especially if I'm going to dance to the club banger shots. Okay, resume dancing. I'm so glad you're all here with me. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, wait a second. Since I just revealed my supportive medical pregnancy strap, I should also tell you that I am also at the phase of pregnancy where I have the, this is not going to be cute, but please, it started not cute. We have the extra strap, you know, the one, had to order it. The extender to extend the nursing bra that I'm wearing because, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to be wearing it for the next 6 to 9 months. So you might as well start now, you know? So that's the phase we're in. I am in a full sweat from dancing, and I am so happy that you're all here. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So I am 35 weeks pregnant today. And the reason that is crazy is because it was on this day, exactly this day during my twin pregnancy, that I gave birth to Rio and Dre, which is terrifying because I am not ready to give birth to anything emotionally, physically, logistically, plus sorry, but scheduling wise, it's really not good timing. I am in post-production on New Momhood is season 4. We have a new newsletter coming out. I have a column. I can't, not right now. Okay. So I'm just saying, please stay in as long as you can because we're not ready. Don't have diapers. Don't have a little bassinet. Don't even have a little outfit to take it home in. Not ready. I would prefer this baby just continue to stay inside and kick the living shit out of me for at least another month and a half. I would take that because I'm not ready. And speaking of staying inside, shout out to my Ontario moms. How are you doing? How was the third lockdown going? How are we feeling? How are your kids? Tell me in the comments what is going on. Because that is, today we're going to check in and I want to talk, we're obviously talking about the COVID-19 vaccine. So tell me if you've gotten vaccinated, if you haven't, where you're at there. This is a conversation that I want you all to be a part of because as you know, you guys, I'm still fully out of breath from my very aggressive club dancing. And I'm slightly horrified that there's a very, really professional and qualified medical doctor who's standing by, who was just sitting there in her medical scrubs watching me thrust my large belly at the screen. So a little embarrassed about that. So as you know, I posted, that I made an educated decision to get the COVID-19 vaccine. I did that after conversations with my doctors, my OB, my prenatal specialist. I read all the articles. I did all the 4 a.m. Googling. And finally, I made that choice for my body and for my baby because I thought that is what would keep us safe. So 90% of your comments were supportive and kind and encouraging. And I'm still grateful. I'm seeing them all coming in today. I'm so glad that I shared my decision if it helped you in any way to come to your own. But for all of those positive comments, there was 10% that were shocking and hurtful and calling me, I'm going to show you a couple. Just, I don't want to put too much attention on it, but I do want you to see the level of comments that I received. This one says, hashtag genocide for you and your child. I hope yours is the placebo. This next one says, fucking freak show and a half. Have fun being an experiment. I bet you'll be a great mother using your child as one as well. Spontaneous abortion, miscarriage are listed as the #1 adverse reaction to the shot for pregnant women, right on the CDC website. Something to consider before listening to influencers. So, I mean, I really do believe that everyone is entitled to their own beliefs and opinions, and everyone should do what you believe is best for you and your body and your family. But I want to put this out there and say, coming after a pregnant woman and her choices is unlike anything that I have ever experienced before. And if I'm being totally honest, it really hit me. It hurt me and it affected me. And usually I don't let that kind of thing bother me, but this one felt different because women were coming after me and my choices as a mom and as a pregnant woman. And like, clearly I'm still not over it because I'm in my most vulnerable state. We all are as moms, and it doesn't help to hear that. And so beyond just like that level of extreme anti-vax comments, there were just so many questions that so many of you asked me to this day in my DMs. You're asking me about side effects, what vaccine I got, was I worried about my kids getting sick? And I know that you all think I'm a doctor. Like I know I give off that vibe. I get it a lot, but I'm not. So I didn't feel like I could answer your questions. And that is why I brought in a woman who can. She is the chair of family medicine and obstetrics at St. Michael's Hospital. She is the co-founder of Pandemic Pregnancy Guide on Instagram, which you should all follow. It's so, so helpful just for moms and women in general. And today, she is here to answer all of our questions about the COVID-19 vaccine as it affects women, moms, pregnant people. Nothing is off limits. This is an open conversation. I urge you to jump in the comments with your questions for Dr. Tali Bogler.
Hello.
Hi. Yes, did you want to dance? Should I put shots on? Would that be a good look for you professionally?
No, yeah, I'll pass on that. But thank you. Your dancing was lovely, Jessie. It was
really Tali. I want everyone to know that I can see her like in the lower screen, and I could see her just sitting there watching me do this. And it was very uncomfortable for me for a moment. But that's why it's you, Tali, because I know that you appreciate it.
No, I wanted to dance with you, but I wasn't on the screen. So no, it was fabulous.
Should I call you Dr.
No, call me Tali. Tali, it's perfect.
Okay, we're on a Tali basis, but your scrubs remind me that you are like a very senior person at St. Michael's. So we don't have credentials in common, but we do have our twin momness in common.
Yeah. Oh,
a twin mom.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can share, being on this screen with you, Jessie, is like so cool for me, actually, because we were pregnant with twins at the exact same time. And you were a month ahead of me, and I actually had a complicated twin pregnancy as well. And I was watching you share your stories about your complications and bed rest and everything that you were going through. And I literally felt like we were pregnant together. You know how you have like pregnant friends?
Yes.
And you go through the journey together, and then you have your mom friends. Like I felt that we were like pregnancy friends, and yet you had no idea who I was. But you sharing your stories, people would send me your stories, look at her stories, and it gave me a lot of hope. And it's just so fabulous to actually be talking to you about other stuff besides twins, but also that we have that connection with, being a twin mom.
Tali, that means the world to me because for me, my twin mom, when I was pregnant with twins, was Beyonce, who I'm going to say a little less tangible or relatable. At one point, I was like, we're the same. And then she flipped upside down at the Grammys while like 8 months pregnant with twins. And I was like, we are not. So I'm glad I could be your Beyonce, Dr. Tali. That means a lot, especially coming from you. So I wanted dive in because I can see the questions are pouring in. I want to address all of the fears, the worries, the misconceptions around the COVID-19 vaccine as it relates to kids, women. But first, I just want to get something out of the way because I was asked so many times when I posted about it. So I just want to say right now, we are not getting paid by any pharmaceutical companies. Like, people were asking me if I was paid to post about my vaccine. Let's just clear that up. I wish no one's getting paid for anything right now, correct?
Oh yeah, no. Pandemic Pregnancy Guide, it's run by 3 physicians. We're actually not paid to even run our Instagram page either. We are just literally trying to provide evidence that's reliable, that's up to date, so that everyone can feel informed in their decisions. And we do it because we're passionate about women's health, and we're passionate about your health, and that women can make decisions that are in their best interest. And that's it. We're not paid to do actually any of this.
And I think, from my perspective, also not getting paid, but I felt a certain responsibility when I saw, and continue even today when I posted, to see misconceptions, posted in my comments. I feel a responsibility to use my platform to put some facts out in the world and to give people the right information and let them make their own decisions from there. So I want to start, let's dive in at pregnancy, and then we'll move on to moms and women and breastfeeding. But for pregnant women, what is the number one question you get asked about the vaccine?
Yeah, so I would say probably the number one question, and I get exactly where it's coming from, is, are there long-term studies on the vaccine? Like, how do I know this will be safe long-term for my baby? I don't know if you're seeing that come in or if you've had that question too, but I get it. And I get it because I was pregnant not so long ago. And, I get that we're worried about almost everything that we do when we're pregnant, what we eat, if we exercise, and all we want to do is make sure that our babies and our pregnancy is the healthiest possible. And I get that. And so what I say to that question is I say, I think all of us would want more studies. All of us would want decades of research. Yeah. We all want more information rather than less. But we don't have that this second. But I will say a couple things why I feel very confident still recommending the vaccine in pregnancy. So I'll say that we have decades of data on vaccines. Even though we don't have decades, on this mRNA vaccine in pregnancy, we have lots of information. We know very well how this vaccine works. We give lots of vaccines in pregnancy. We give the flu shot, we give the whooping cough vaccine. And these aren't live vaccines, meaning that, we generally recommend avoiding live vaccines in pregnancy. This is not a live vaccine. An mRNA vaccine doesn't go back into your cells, interacting with the DNA of your cells or your fetus's cells. So we know a lot about that. We know a lot about the safety. But now in the United States, there's been over 90,000 pregnant women in the United States who have received the vaccine. And there have been no signals in terms of adverse safety, adverse pregnancy outcomes, or adverse neonatal, so baby outcomes. There have been no red flags or any signals whatsoever. And actually, there was a really good study that came out in one of the most reputable medical journals that we have, and actually looked at a group of these pregnant Americans who received the vaccine, primarily in their 3rd trimester, and looked to see, are there any, bad outcomes in terms of the pregnancy or in the babies once those moms delivered? And there were no adverse pregnancy or neonatal outcomes. There was also no difference really in terms of side effects in the pregnant mom who received the vaccine versus other women. So all I have to say is this is very reassuring stuff. Obviously, we all want long-term data. I get that question, but I think you need to think about what we know about. Can I talk more? If I'm talking too long, Jessi, you can tell me to stop.
We're here to listen. I'm going to sit back with my water. You keep talking.
You tell me where to stop.
Because these are all the fears and concerns that I had. And even listening to you, I'm like, well, but what happens if something happens to my baby and all of those 90,000 babies in 10 years? Like, that doesn't worry you. Like, please, go on.
Yeah, I think I get that. Of course, that's what all of us are thinking about. But you also have to look at the risk right now, wherever you're living. So I live in Ontario, where the rate of transmission of COVID-19 is quite high. And what we know about COVID-19 in pregnancy. So what do we know? And I just want to talk about that a little bit, because that's also evolved over the year. This is real time learning. We are learning as we're experiencing this pandemic. At first, we didn't know. At first, we thought maybe pregnancy is protective. We weren't seeing such severe illness. But over the last several months, it has become quite clear that when you're pregnant and if you get COVID-19, you are at risk of becoming more severely sick, requiring a hospital admission, unfortunately requiring an ICU admission and possibly support breathing. And because of you being unwell, it might actually induce you going into premature labor, so delivering at an earlier stage than term when intended. Or you might be so unwell that we actually have to have an emergency C-section at an earlier stage in your pregnancy too. So we are seeing pregnant women get more sick from COVID-19. And so you really have to weigh the risks of deciding not to get vaccinated and the potential risks of getting so sick that will inevitably, affect your baby and your pregnancy long-term, potentially too, if you have a baby earlier than planned. And, the unknown of, 10 to 20 years from now, what that risk theoretically could be, even though we have decades of data on vaccines and we know how they work and we give them to children. We would not expect this to be any different than all the other vaccines we've been giving for decades. So I guess the bottom line is every person needs to make a risk-benefit analysis. And I always suggest doing that with somebody you trust, like your healthcare provider, whoever's following you in your pregnancy, or maybe that's your family doctor who knows you and your current situation, where you live, what your family's risk of exposure is. And going through all the very reassuring stuff that we know about the vaccine and going through that data and together making a decision that you feel the most comfortable with.
I think for me too, my doctors were incredibly clear to me about if I were to contract COVID-19 as a pregnant woman, it would put my baby at much higher risk for preterm labor. And having had preemie twins and going through the trauma of that, I knew that was not something I wanted. The other thing for me as a pregnant person is I knew, unlike the last 8 months prior to being pregnant, I could stay home, I could work from home, I could remain relatively safe. But now that I'm pregnant, I am going to have to go into doctor's offices. I'm going to have to see my OB and my specialist and be in medical buildings. And I know that I'm going to be in a hospital for 3 to 5 days. So that just knowing that risk was going to be there for me made me want to protect myself even more. That was part of my decision.
Yeah, and I think those are really valid points. I will say there was this interesting study that looked at whether getting COVID-19 was higher for pregnant women going to appointments. And they found that it wasn't. That was in the first wave. But it's actually a very interesting study that they actually looked at this, because obviously that's one of our concerns, how many are coming in for. But you have to think about it, and I just want to give that reassurance, is that the hospitals and where you're getting your ultrasounds are so meticulous about infection control. They're all wearing personal protective equipment and in the hospitals. And by and large, most of them are all now vaccinated. And I don't want to say that that's not a concern you should have, but it's actually one of the safest places to be when we think about other things that are potentially available to us, like eating out in certain places, or other places. Like, it is actually one of the safest places to be and deliver. But I get that, coming from staying at home and not doing anything, let's say, and then having to go out, it can be quite nerve-wracking. And the other thing, what people should think about when they think about their exposure, it's even though you might be able to stay at home, what about your partner? Or some people might have other kids that have to go to school or daycare. It's actually quite difficult to be a hermit, like, in this world. Maybe some people can do it, and good luck, and and they might be able to, but a lot of people can't.
And so many people who, even just that we know in our personal circles who have contracted COVID-19 were people who are doing everything right. Right. So the big, huge question, I know I'm seeing it come in, and keep your comments and questions coming. We're going to throw them up. And I want to throw this one up from Shannon Kareen, living in Ontario, high risk area. Is first trimester safe to be vaccinated? So everyone wants to know what trimester is the safest.
So Shannon, that is it's a great question. And I'm going to answer this question specifically to you. And it's because you're living in Ontario. And we know the risk of transmission right now is so high here in Ontario. And because of that, what we're saying as maternity care providers, any vaccine at any point in your pregnancy is the best vaccine that you can get and is the best shield for you in terms of your protection and your baby. Just because really the risk of exposure is so high right now. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second, I want to say two more things. That's why this discussion always needs to be with your maternity care provider, taking into account where you live, because the recommendation that I give to someone in Ontario right now might be a little bit more nuanced or different depending on where you live.
Oh, the people in Newfoundland are chilling right now. Just like,
you know, and they, you know, they're very fortunate to be in that situation. But here in Ontario, it's a different story right now in wave 3. What we're seeing in terms of the variants of concern and what we're seeing now in terms of pregnant people in the hospital. But the only thing I want to say, and I just want to say this because I want to be, I like providing the evidence so you feel 100% informed and not like a blanket statement. And I am giving you that blanket statement because I know the risk of exposure is so high. But I do want to say a little bit about what we know in terms of the trimesters. So that amazing study that I was talking about, that New England Journal of Medicine study that came out last week, that was part of the VSafe, the CDC surveillance program in the United States that looked at all of these pregnant women getting the vaccine. So in terms of the pregnant women who actually delivered, so have had a live birth, and they've actually looked at pregnancy outcomes, all of those pregnant people received their vaccine in the 3rd trimester, okay? So I can really confidently say that, you know, the vaccine in 3rd trimester really had no safety signals in terms of pregnancy or neonatal baby outcomes. The thing is, the pregnant women who received it in their 1st trimester, they haven't delivered yet. So we don't have as strong, like confident data yet to say it's 100% safe. Well, we don't really have 100% safe in anything in medicine, but I just want to say that you're right in the sense that some people are a little bit more cautious in the 1st trimester because the risk of miscarriage in general is more common in 1st trimester. Nothing to do with COVID-19. We just know that it is more common. And some people have a little bit more of a cautious approach to 1st trimester. This is not science-based. It's not evidence-based, but in general, many pregnant people, when they find out, they try to be a little bit more cautious in the 1st trimester just because the miscarriage rate is high. We have data from animal studies, rats, like pregnant rats and mice who received the vaccine in their 1st trimester, and there were no adverse pregnancy or baby outcomes in those animal studies. We also know that in the initial Pfizer and Moderna trials, there are actually people that got pregnant right after receiving the vaccine, even though they hadn't intended to, and they've delivered, and there have been no red flags in their pregnancy or in the baby's outcomes either. I just want to kind of clarify that the real good data that we have as of today is primarily in the 3rd trimester.
Okay. But your advice overarching is consult with your medical professional and get it when you can, and do what feels best for you.
Yes.
Because I think, and I'm reading the comments and I'm seeing like, this is something that I had in my brain, which was like, so I can't eat soft cheeses. I can't eat shellfish, but I can get a vaccine that is less than a year old. Like that still obviously makes me nervous. And I think I'm seeing that reflected in a lot of the questions and comments.
I totally get it. I don't know what, I 100% get that. The thing about some of those other things, I have to say, some of them are not that evidence-based either. The things that we commonly believe we shouldn't do in 1st trimester. Like we could have a whole other discussion in that, but just because we don't do those things doesn't mean those things are actually right either. Like the sushi, we can have a whole discussion about sushi and really what is wrong with, you know, if you go to Japan, everyone's eating sushi when they're pregnant in first trimester or third, you know, but there's a different issue with sushi and pregnancy. I'm not saying everyone should go eat sushi, Jessi. You're like, wait, what?
I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I just posted a picture of me at an all-you-can-eat sushi bar pregnant.
I think
I
we
want
need
to
to
see
do another
those
live on
comments.
sushi and pregnancy, but all I want to say is I get that people are worried in the first trimester, you know, but there's really no biological, like plausible reason why these would be unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that if you were to get sick while pregnant with COVID-19, the risk to your health and the baby's health is quite high right now.
That's what it always comes back to, I think. And you brought up miscarriages happening more frequently in the first trimester. I got a lot of messages telling me that I would have a miscarriage getting the vaccine. There are comments on my page and certainly in here too happening now saying, oh, I know this person had a miscarriage. This person had a miscarriage.
Yeah.
Like, is there any evidence to support that?
Yeah. Yeah. So you put out the question there. I see that.
Yeah.
So it's really, I would say that is one of the most common things that we see on our Instagram account. Well, haven't these people read that there were miscarriages after the vaccine? And what about the miscarriages? And you're right, there were miscarriages, but that's also because there are miscarriages in general. So when they actually looked at the side effect profile and the pregnancy outcomes in this VAERS V-Safe CDC surveillance program. It's such an active, solid program that they collect all of this information. And they saw that there were the highest rates of all the side effects were miscarriages. But when they looked at the general population and the rates of miscarriages in general, it was actually even a little bit less than the general population. So if anything, there were no differences in the rates of miscarriage in pregnant women who received the vaccine compared to the baseline rate of miscarriages.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I know that there has been some research also coming out saying babies of moms who have been vaccinated, those babies are born with antibodies. Is that true? Do we have?
So, you know, I love this research because it just kind of gives a little bit of a boost. You know, I know that's not the number one reason why, Jessi, you got vaccinated. You wanted to protect yourself. But as a little bonus, you know, now your baby's probably getting protection as well. So when they studied, they looked at the cord blood, which is like basically the umbilical cord that's attached to you and baby, and it's still there once you deliver until it's cut. And they actually looked at that umbilical cord blood, which is essentially like the baby's blood. And in those pregnant people that received their vaccine during pregnancy, and they found those antibodies that the mom sort of responded to the vaccine with actually travels through the placenta and was found in that umbilical cord blood of the baby at birth, which is amazing.
It's air horn sound effect worthy, Dr. Tali.
I will say that some people are using that as like the main reason they want to get vaccinated, potentially. I want to be able to give my baby that protection. We've also found those antibodies in breast milk, which is, you know, this is not surprising to us. This is one of the reasons we actually recommend vaccines in pregnancy, because we know it can give protection to the baby. The thing is, right now, this is early data. We know it's there. We know the antibodies are there, but we don't know how long those antibodies last in the baby or in the breast milk and what that actually confers in terms of immunity for the baby. So this is preliminary early data. It is amazing. It is great stuff. We're not surprised by it, but we just need a little bit more research to see what that means for the baby in long term.
Got it. We have infinite questions for you about first dose, because I know in Canada there's a lot of people and pregnant women are becoming eligible to get that first dose, and then there's still that wait period. So Carmen says, can the baby get antibodies from only one dose? And I want to add to that question, Tali, can breast milk, can babies get antibodies through breast milk if you've had one dose?
Yeah. So the answer is we actually don't know yet, because there have not really been studies in terms of the antibodies in the cord blood or breast milk after pregnant individuals that only had one dose. There was one study, the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, that this is like the main study that actually looked at the cord blood. I think there was one mom who might have gotten just one dose and found it in the cord blood, but basically the bottom line is we don't have enough evidence yet. I will say that it makes sense that some will transfer through the placenta and some will be in breast milk. Whether it's as high as somebody who's received 2 doses, potentially not, but there probably is some benefit there. I just don't know how much yet. And hopefully research will start to, elucidate and focus on that 1 dose versus 2 doses. And the other thing which is really interesting is when should the pregnant individual get that vaccine in terms of giving the best chance of transferring those antibodies to the baby. So this is all being researched right now. So stay tuned. Honestly, if you guys follow us on Pandemic Pregnancy Guide, every week we're actually updating our followers on the research that comes out. We actually broke down that American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology study so that relatable, you can understand it, and we'll continue to do that. So, we're trying to keep you all up to date as we learn as well.
Oh my gosh. And thank you. It's been such a helpful resource for me and so many women. So what about, we're going to get to everything. I see all the questions. What about, sort of parents? So parents of toddlers, parents of babies. If we are vaccinated, how should that affect the way our kids move through the world? Should it at all?
Yeah. And I think,
am I throwing my baby? Am I giving my baby to anyone who wants to hold it at the grocery store at this point, Tali? Like, what kind of protections are we giving to our kids if we've been vaccinated?
Yeah. And I think this is like the COVID quandary right now, especially here in Canada, where so many people have only received 1 vaccine. Right? And are you talking about any parents who are doubly vaccinated?
I would talk about both. I'd love to know about both. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the answer to this is very context dependent. So forget about Canada for now, because in the United States, actually, the CDC has come out with very, clear guidelines in terms of if parents are vaccinated, or grandparents are vaccinated, how they're going to interact with the kids who are unvaccinated, right? And basically what the CDC, and this is the United States, not in Canada, has said is that if a vaccinated individual is doubly vaccinated, they can then interact with an unmasked, unvaccinated, low-risk individual, which essentially would be probably a young child. So I think everyone needs to follow their local public health guidelines. The United States is on a different page right now, totally different situation. In Canada, it's a little bit trickier because we don't have such clear-cut guidelines because most of us are only partially vaccinated. So it's a little bit trickier how to navigate that. And basically the bottom line is we need to just continue doing what we've been doing, staying outside for the most part when we're trying to interact with people, wearing masks if indoors, trying to be in ventilated places, avoiding very crowded areas, and doing the same thing. We know that 1 dose is very good at preventing severe illness. We know that. We just don't know how long, and if all groups, like a 90-year-old who receives 1 dose, probably their immune reaction is not the same as a 30-year-old who receives 1 dose.
Right.
So in Canada, it's a little bit trickier how to navigate this 1 dose situation. And hopefully we'll all be getting the 2nd dose relatively soon.
So what about, I want to talk about just women and vaccines, because I've seen some questions coming up about the blood clots that were found in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and also menstrual cycles being affected. There has been research coming out. There we go. Hannah says, can your menstrual cycle come late due to the vaccine? What do we know there? Yeah.
So this is super interesting because what happened after vaccine rollouts is that many women started talking to each other and saying, my menstrual cycle was a little bit late or heavier, actually, or it came earlier than intended. And this isn't one of the side effect profiles that the active surveillance programs, in the United States, for example, looks at. We look at fever, we look at muscle aches and headaches as side effects of vaccines, but nobody really asks about menstrual cycles. But we know, women that are menstruating, that menstrual cycles are important to us. And that is a very important side effect. And I think it's interesting that it's not always studied as a side effect. There are two really good studies happening right now that are actually asking women to join so they can really study, is this actually a side effect of the COVID-19 vaccines in terms of changes in menstrual cycle? They haven't studied it yet, so we don't know 100% if it is or not. I believe that so many women have said it could be. I do. I think we know our bodies very well. And when enough people are saying it, there probably is some link to it. But we don't know, is it the vaccine itself? Is it the stress around the vaccine? We know it's been very complicated to sign up to get a vaccine. Perhaps it's the stress that we know can impact our hormones and how we ovulate. Or is there some sort of inflammation response to the vaccine when we're sort of developing our immune system? And we know the lining of the uterus is involved in our immune system as well. So maybe there's something to do with that leads to an earlier bleed or heavier bleed. Bottom line is, research is now looking at it, and stay tuned.
And by the way, that's so frustrating as a woman, and I'm sure for you as a woman in the healthcare field, that studies around menstrual cycles and women's health sort of often take a back seat. But I'm glad that they're studying it now.
Now, I know. And I think, we've seen this throughout the pandemic. We saw it with vaccine trials. Pregnant women weren't included for many different reasons, ethical reasons. It's difficult. But because they were excluded initially, that's where it left, societies and maternal organizations not knowing how to recommend. We're seeing potentially some menstrual changes to the vaccine. We also have seen sometimes side effects that can be more pronounced in women than men. Anyways, I think in everything that we do in medicine and in science, it is super important to have a sex and gender lens to what we do, so we could be informed in terms of our health and know potential side effects. Just like if I were to tell you, you might get a fever from the vaccine, I want to be able to tell you, you might notice some earlier spotting than intended in the first month or two. And if you know that, you will feel more informed and aware of your body when it happens.
And I mean, I should let everybody know that I did get the COVID-19 vaccine and I haven't menstruated in 9 months. So someone should look into that. What about the blood clots? Here's
another really good example. Yeah. So we were seeing, different than the mRNA vaccine. So in the States, it's the Johnson & Johnson. In Canada, it's AstraZeneca. These two vaccines are adenovirus vector vaccines. They are different than the mRNA vaccines. And there have been reports of this very rare side effect to these vaccines that are antibodies, so they're immunological sort of induced reactions after the vaccine. Extremely, extremely, extremely rare. But what I want to say is that the mechanism of these rare side effects to these vaccines is completely different to the clots that we know about for women that are taking estrogen-containing birth control pills or during pregnancy or postpartum. So I think what happened is lots of women became, quite nervous. Well, if I'm on a birth control pill and I already know that might increase my risk of clots, can I get the adenovirus vector vaccines? What if my clot risk goes up much higher? Or what about in pregnancy? And the answer is, from what we know right now, we don't think there's actually an association in terms of the hormone type of clots and this vaccine-induced clot. We're still studying it. And, obviously people are looking into this quite heavily right now and really looking to see why was it in women more than potentially in men. One of the reasons people think that could be is because more women were getting vaccinated. The majority of frontline healthcare workers that were getting vaccinated, those are primarily women. So perhaps that's why we were seeing a higher rate of these very rare clots in women as opposed to men, but nothing to do potentially with the hormones that women have primarily.
And I think the key there is just how rare it is, right? And I'm sure,
extremely rare.
Once again, not a doctor, but I'm sure you would find side effects like that in other vaccines that everybody has received in 6-7% of people who receive them, right?
Yeah, there are very rare side effects to almost any medication.
Mm-hmm.
The issue that caused this to be paused is because we didn't understand it. For us to say, okay, let's move on, we need to understand it and we need to know how to treat it. So I think it was very cautious and smart for them. Let's take a pause. Let's see if we need to understand this better. We need to make sure this is even related to the vaccine for sure. We need to know how it happens so that we can treat it. And that's the reason for the pause.
Yeah, makes sense. I want to throw this up because we've been getting it a lot. Question. I like that Megan says, question for the doctor. Not you, bitch. This is for the doctor. What do we know about, what do we know? I'll take this one, Megan. What do we know about the vaccine's effects on fertility, short and long term?
Yeah. So this was circulating for a while, oh my God. Okay. So where do we start? So basically there was this theory that was thrown out on a non-reputable website that basically said that there is when you get the vaccine, basically it's a recipe to tell your body to make a spike protein, and that spike protein is a component of the actual COVID-19 virus. Okay, so stay with me for a second.
Okay.
And basically, your body develops antibodies to this spike protein. Okay, and then if your body is ever introduced to the actual COVID-19 virus later on, your body will have that memory to know to fight the actual COVID-19 virus. So they looked at the building blocks of this spike protein that your body develops from the vaccine. And they looked at the building blocks of this protein that makes, that helps establish your placenta. And they looked and there were some similarities, like 3 to 4 of those building blocks out of a long string of building blocks that had some similarities. And because of that, they said, well, if your body attacks the spike protein, how do we know your body's immune system won't attack this protein that's really important to develop the placenta? And this has been debunked, and I'll tell you why.
Tell us.
Just because you have 3 to 4 little similarities in a long strand of building blocks, most of our body's proteins have a few similarities. There's only 20 building blocks to choose from. So obviously a few of them are going to have some similarities. And then that protein needs to wrap around. It has a special way to do that. Basically, there is no way that your immune system would be attacking this syncytin 1 protein to develop your placenta like it does to this spike protein. There's just no possible way. And if it did, we would then be seeing higher rates of miscarriage in the population and all of those women who contracted COVID-19 in their first trimester, which we are not seeing. We are not seeing higher rates of miscarriage. We are not seeing higher rates of infertility in women who actually got natural COVID-19 infection. Also, many women, again, in those initial trials that I was explaining about, got the vaccine and then got pregnant, even though the study coordinators basically said you cannot get pregnant. They still got pregnant. Mm-hmm. And now we also have data from, it's a preprint study from Israel that looked at women that were going through egg retrieval and looked at women that got the vaccine and others who actually had COVID-19 infection and looked at their egg quality and the numbers, and there were no differences in those women who had gotten the vaccine or even COVID-19 infection in terms of their egg quality and egg numbers. So that is, again, very reassuring that this was a complete myth that somebody put up in a non-reputable site and spread like wildfire. And this is why it's so important for everyone to stop when they read misinformation. And where are they getting it from? Why is it invoking fear? Of course, that's going to make you nervous, especially for someone who's planning on having kids in the next few years. And just basically pause and, put it away, ask somebody reputable, and then move on from it. And just because it was like some random thought that's now in your head, it doesn't mean that there's any fact or any basis to it.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I want to, and we're going to end with a little debunking of some misconceptions, but I want to quickly address the sort of anti-vax groups and voices out there because they are loud, and every comment they post on my page, and right now in this live, I see you in the comments. So but every comment that they post can influence people. And what is most concerning to you about that movement and that misinformation that's being spread?
Well, I think it's like, you know, people say things, and even if you know it's not true, what worries me is that, well, now it's at the back of your head. Now somebody put this thought in your head that you hadn't even thought about, but now it's there. And even if it's debunked a million times, maybe it's still at the back of your head when you're making a decision. And that's what really scares me. It scares me that people on social media have large followings and people listen to it, people that don't have any medical training, and are putting out things that scientifically, like biologically, like don't make any sense. Like there was one, I don't even want to say what it is, but like that you could shed the vaccine. Like, I don't even want to go into it. There's just such crazy stuff out there. And I'm reading it. I'm like, how would this even be possible? But yet people really believe it. And I think we all, as like a community of pregnant women and women in general, need to like be strong in advocating like against misinformation and calling it out when it is. And, holding, social media, like Instagram and Facebook and lots of other industries accountable when, misinformation is spreading.
And I want to be clear, everybody has the right to make their own decision about what they put in their body and what they do for their family, period. I do not judge my closest friends who choose not to get the vaccine or to. It's when you are spreading misinformation, unresearched information that is truly dangerous. And I want to just speak as myself, as a intelligent, college-educated person who believes in science and medicine. I had spoken to my doctors, the doctors who delivered my preemie twins, and as you know, saved their lives in utero, and were telling me, get this vaccine. And then at Psycho Jane 244 is telling me I'm going to have a miscarriage, and suddenly I'm crying myself to sleep because of what Psycho Jane 244 told me on the internet. And that is scary, that I was affected by those voices. And it honestly took my husband like shaking me, crying in the middle of the night saying, what are you doing? You have to listen to research and science and doctors. And if you don't, then you're never going to make a right decision. And that was truly like a scary moment for me. And I imagine that so many women watching this now are having those fears because of what they've seen and read.
100%. And Jessi, I echo what you're saying. Like, I think at the end of the day, this is really an individual decision. It's about your risk profile, like, and having that discussion with somebody you trust, potentially in the medical field. I totally get that. And I'm not saying it's like a bad decision not to get the vaccine. I think everyone needs to make a decision for themselves. What I am saying is when there's lies out there and people are saying you're going to have a miscarriage now, pregnancy is a vulnerable time at the best of times, like nothing to do with COVID. And it's sometimes very difficult to make decisions in general, about anything, like where should I deliver and who should care for me and what should I eat and is this safe and should I travel or whatever. And it's a very emotional, vulnerable time. And now add on COVID, and I know, Jessi, you've been posting about going to appointments alone, and it's such an even more vulnerable time than ever before for pregnant people. Mm-hmm. And add on this decision about the vaccines, I get it if somebody is telling me I'm nervous and I want to talk about it. I totally get it. And that's not what this is right now. What we're talking about is let's go through the science and what we know and help you make an informed decision. Not like you are bad, you are good or bad about whatever decision you are making. Is just making sure you know the actual factual information so you can make the best decision for you.
And I'll just put this out there, that spreading misinformation, shaming, fear-mongering is not productive to anybody, pregnant or not. It's especially not productive when somebody comes out and says, hey, I got the vaccine. And then you pile on. It's done. It's done. We made the decision. That person made the decision. It's done. That's not helpful or moving the conversation forward. I do want to ask you before we get to our game, I want to ask you, Tali, like you mentioned, you don't, it's a personal decision if people get the vaccine or not. But so now there's like this TV special that's happening with Selena Gomez and Jennifer Lopez that's, about the vaccine, and clearly is a push to encourage as many people as possible to get vaccinated. So what is the fear there? What would happen if not enough people in the population get it?
Yeah. This is a really good question. And I think when we talk about everyone getting the vaccine, I'm not just talking about where you live. Like everyone's so focused in Ontario and Canada. I'm talking about like on a global level. And there's a couple reasons why we all need to get the vaccine. And when I talk about pregnancy, I do talk about the individual decision because it's a sensitive time. And I think that discussion should be made. And I do think everyone should access the vaccine in general. But I know at the end of the day, it's someone's individual decision. So that I'm just saying that I respect that. But on a global level, I do strongly believe we all need to get vaccinated so we can put an end to this. And for a couple of reasons, why we can't only worry about our own family or our own province or country is because we have a moral and ethical responsibility to make sure everyone in this world has access to the vaccine. It's just that it is a moral and ethical responsibility to make sure that everyone is protected, no matter what country they live in, no matter how much money they have, no matter who they are. Because what's happening in India right now impacts all of us, not just because we're worried that maybe those variants of concern are going to come here, but because we have a moral and ethical responsibility to make sure that they have access to the vaccine and are protected. But then there's also, the collective responsibility that we all need to be vaccinated because we want to be done with this. And by that, I mean, what happens somewhere else in the world will eventually affect us as well. So the variants of concern that we're seeing here in Ontario didn't just come up like from nowhere. They came from international travel. They came from other places. And so we're all in this together. And that's why we all need to be vaccinated.
So you believe that if you are not pregnant, if you are not breastfeeding, if you are just a person, that it is part of your responsibility on planet Earth to get vaccinated?
Yes, I do. And I think in terms of pregnancy, I think we have lots of information why you should get vaccinated as well, because we know the risk of COVID-19 in pregnancy now, and we know that pregnant women can get more sick from the virus. And in breastfeeding, we didn't really touch upon this, and I know there's tons of questions. There really is no reason why the vaccine would be unsafe while breastfeeding. It's not a live vaccine. We give lots of vaccines, and we have lots of information about vaccines for lactating individuals. And there probably is some immunity benefit of a breastfeeding person receiving the vaccine in terms of it being in the breast milk. So really, I'm pretty clear cut with breastfeeding. Like I think it's, we know that they're likely to be very, very safe. Pregnancy, I get that, it often, I get that there needs to be a discussion, and I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great summation of everything that we've talked about. And I want to end, like we do every night on New Momhood is Live, with a game. Tonight's game is called Vaxx or Fiction. Here is how it's going to work. I am going to tell you, the viewer, something that has been going around about the COVID-19 vaccine. Our audience, okay, you have to jump in the comments and guess if it is fact or fiction. And then Dr. Tali will weigh in with the correct answer. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you are our Jeopardy host tonight. I was going to say our Alec Trebek, may he rest in peace. You are our host tonight. All right, so here's how it works. We're going to start with a very, very important one. And by the way, if you still have questions, we're probably going to address them in these questions. Vaxx or fiction, people with Botox or fillers could get facial or lip swelling. People with Botox or fillers should be wary of getting the vaccine, apparently, according to the internet, because they could have swelling. All right. I'm looking down. I'm looking at your answers. Fiction, says Jamie. Fiction, says Monica. Mindy says fiction. Monica says fiction. All right. Tali, tell us, should people with Botox or fillers get the vaccine?
Yes, fiction. Fiction.
Fiction!
But can I say one thing, though? It wasn't Botox. There were never any issues with Botox. The concern was actually in fillers. Fillers and Botox are different.
Oh, I clearly don't know because I clearly don't get it. Continue.
So I'll just say the rate for those who had received fillers was like 3 in over 15,000 people had some sort of swelling in those sites of the fillers. So rare to the point that the American Derm Society said, like, don't even worry about this. Just go ahead and get your vaccine. There's some other people that said wait 4 to 8 weeks after getting a filler to get the vaccine. But by and large, like, it's so rare. Anyways.
I love that we're cool. We're cool to go get our fillers, but the vaccine, I'm not sure. Love that. All right, next question. The COVID vaccine contains a oh, we have an audio problem. Okay, stand by. Gonna change our mic. How's this? Is this better? Okay, sorry, we had a mic problem. Sometimes like this angry monster comes and tackles my mic. Okay, the vaccine contains a microchip that will allow Bill Gates to track us. Is this fact or fiction? I see a lot of fiction coming in. Fiction. All right, Tali, tell us. I'm going to give you a drum roll because this is a big reveal. Is it fact or fiction?
Fiction.
What? How did this even start?
I don't know, but it's a common one.
People
to the point where, like, in our hospital's vaccine facts page, we actually put it like out.
No.
Yeah, like, no.
In medical documents, it says the 5G network. Oh my God.
Hiya.
Oh. Hi, sister. Okay. Question number 3. The COVID-19 vaccine can cause erectile dysfunction. Can the COVID-19 vaccine cause erectile dysfunction, ladies and gentlemen? Is that a fact? Is it fiction? Big concern. Big, as much as we women are concerned about our menstrual cycles, the men are all talking about their penis hardness. I think that's the medical concern term, is it not, Dr. Tali?
Yeah. You're perfect.
Okay. All right. A lot of fiction coming in. Tell us, is it fact or fiction?
Fiction.
But
I do want to add a little interesting point here, that if you're really worried about erectile dysfunction, which is a valid concern, you are more likely to get erectile dysfunction from COVID-19 infection itself. There has been no link with the vaccine whatsoever, but they have found that some men, they're looking at this, they're studying this, actually do suffer from erectile dysfunction after the COVID-19 infection, because we know that the COVID-19 infection has a lot to do with inflammation. There's lots of inflammation happening in various areas of the body, and it's very connected to our heart health as well. And there's some thought that the blood flow to the penis actually could be impacted by the inflammation with COVID-19. So one reason to get vaccinated if you don't want erectile dysfunction.
So we've covered Botox, fillers, and erectile dysfunction, which is key. All right, gentlemen, pass that on to your partners. Get vaccinated, protect that penis hardness. Question number 4. The COVID vaccine can cause chills, fever, headaches, or nausea. Fact or fiction? Can it cause chills, fever, headaches, or nausea? Everybody is jumping in the comments. Jen says fact. Fact, says Amelia. Okay, you guys know your stuff. Vaxx, Christina's on theme with the game. Vaxx or fiction, I appreciate it. All right, Tali, tell us, can it cause chills, fever, headaches, or nausea?
It is a fact. And I want to say one thing for our pregnant population, really interesting study that actually they found that pregnant people actually have less of those systemic side effects when they get vaccinated, as opposed to other women that are not pregnant. Super interesting. So pregnant women actually might have more local pain at the site of injection than non-pregnant people, but pregnant people actually have less of the fever, headaches, all of that compared to non-pregnant.
That's so funny. And that's such a huge question that I got and continue to get in my DMs. Did I have side effects? I did not. I had a sore arm from the first one, a sore arm from the second one. And the second one I got we're in the midst of shooting at New Mom This season 4. And so in our schedule, had 2 days blocked off to be sick. I've never done that in my entire life. I was like, Jesse's sick. And I didn't have any reaction, nothing whatsoever. So
it's actually really interesting. We've seen this sort of side effect profile of pregnant people to other vaccines, that the systemic, when I say systemic, fever, headaches, all of that, is actually less in the pregnant population.
Wow. Okay, last question. This is an interesting one. Vaccine injections shown during press events are fake and use syringes with disappearing needles. Now, Tali, I had not heard this. And then I posted the picture of myself. You can clearly see there's a syringe in my arm, and I received multiple comments like this. Can you show me where the needle went? Zoomed in, I see nothing. This is a joke. I bet that needle didn't even go in your arm. I know. I was like, what is going on? Apparently there's this, tell me if you think it's fact or fiction, everybody, but many people were saying they were all fake. The government was faking their photo ops with their vaccines. Is this Vaxx or fiction, Dr. Tali? Tell us.
It is fiction, people. I can tell you that I've been giving the vaccine once a week since January. There definitely is a needle. We definitely draw up the vaccine, and I definitely administer it. I have to say one really good thing is that many people, when I give it to them, say, did you give it to me? Like, are you sure you gave it to me? And I'm like, yes, I gave it to you. It's a very thin needle. It's actually really doesn't hurt. You might feel it for a second, but they don't believe me. But I did. I gave it. We give it. The reason those photos, people were saying that, is because there's actually like this safety device on the end of the needle that you can just retract the needle back into the syringe, or there's a cap to it, so we don't poke ourselves when we're giving the vaccine accidentally. And so people thought that in the photo, you were like, there was no vaccine because it basically retracted into the device. It actually was a thing that people were saying and spread, but no, these are real vaccines. We draw them up, there are needles, and we give it.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, my needle was real, my eyelashes were not. That is how you play Vaxx or fiction. So, it's really, I could talk to you all night, and clearly the comments continue to roll in. So this is what I want to say. Tali, you started Pandemic Pregnancy Guide on Instagram as a resource for pregnant women and beyond, who, people who are understandably nervous and looking for reliable medical information. The page has grown into this hugely helpful resource for all women. So thank you for all the work that you're doing there. If you still have questions, and I know so many of you do, you will definitely find answers at Pandemic Pregnancy Guide. Tali, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Jessi. And I want to say thank you to you for talking about getting the vaccine, knowing you were going to have opinions about it, good and bad, and just being public about it. Kudos to you for doing that and talking about this, really.
Well, I was so genuinely nervous, and clearly I continue to feel nervous about, all of this, as we all are. Yeah. And I wanted to put my genuine feeling and nerves and worries and anxieties out there, so that if there were other pregnant women who felt the same, they might be able to see me in them. And so, and let's be honest, Tali, didn't expect to be called a murderer. Didn't expect that, but I did. I do welcome the conversation, yeah. And I am so grateful to you for providing facts and answers in a way that I never could. So, Tali, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessi.
Mom friends forever,
please.
Really?
Oh my gosh. Well, the first time I spoke to you, I felt like we were already friends, because I felt like we were pregnant friends, and we delivered together even though you didn't know who I was. I delivered with you, basically. So no, seriously. So it's, it's a pleasure actually talking to you now about life and twins and everything else.
Oh my gosh. I hope that you become a regular here. Please don't be a stranger. Also, I need a doctor friend so that I can call.
I hope your pregnancy goes well and everything. And I really do. I hope everything just goes your way and you're healthy and your baby's healthy and everything. Honestly, if you need anything, come call us.
I will. And if I was in Toronto right now, I would come over to your house and have you deliver the baby. Just how much faith I have in you after this conversation. Thank you so much. Dr. Tali Bogler, everybody. Oh my gosh. She's just the best. The best. Mwah, mwah, mwah. That was really, for me, I don't know about how you feel, but I feel like it was really helpful and informative. And I just wanted to hear from her, from a doctor, from someone who has done the research and can talk about the studies, not from the internet. That's, I think, what really is the best takeaway from this conversation is that the information that she provided today is fact-based, it's research-based. And now you are welcome to take it and do with it what you will, but I hope that you will all make informed decisions about what you choose to do. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to end on a high note. My high note, you know how we end on a high note. Put in your high note from the week. Any little positive thing that happened to you. It can be big, it can be small, something good. Because there's a lot of hard and stressful and anxiety inducing in the world. So tell us something good that happened to you this week. My high note is very much related to this episode in that I am now officially double vaccinated. I feel so lucky. I know a lot of you asked me, I got the Pfizer vaccine, but honestly, I drove in not knowing what vaccine I would get. I just took what was available to me. But Evan is also double vaccinated. And now my mom, who is in Vancouver, is officially vaccinated. And we haven't seen her in over 15 months. She hasn't seen her grandkids. I haven't seen her. And she is booked to come visit us next week. So like the relief and it just feels like a weight has been lifted, and I cannot wait to see her, and I'm very grateful that I was able to get it and that my family was too. Okay, Kim says, my eldest son taught his younger brother to pee standing up. Yes, he did. And I'm sure it went right into the toilet, right? Didn't miss at all, just straight shot. High note is that pregnant people became eligible for vaccine in Ontario. Jessica, yes. I saw that, and that is amazing. So, yay. High note, I finally got 5 out of 5 in your game, Kristen. Kristen, by the way, is on every live, and the fact that this was the first time she actually got 5 out of 5, it's a big deal. Even if the questions were about fillers and erectile dysfunction, still a big deal. I don't want to take that away from you. Okay, one more high note. High note, this live, says Ashley. Thank you so much for bringing Dr. Tali on and giving us such important information. Well, that is a good way to end it. Thank you again to Dr. Tali for being here. And you know what? Thank you all for being here. Thank you for jumping in the comments. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for taking an hour out of your day to get this information. I think even being here is bigger than a lot of people who are just like reading headlines and passing on information. Like, thank you for your willingness to learn and talk and be educated. I'm so grateful to all of you. Next week, we are back with a new Mom Who Dis special Mother's Day live. And as is tradition, I want to celebrate with your mom confessions. So we did this last year. Record them on video, record them horizontal. Confess to me your most shameful mom moment. Do you hide from your kids on the toilet? Do you fill your water bottle at the park with wine? Do you bribe your kids with candy on road trips? I do all of the above. Tell me in a quick video. Send them to newmomwhodisshow@gmail.com, and we are going to share them all on next week's live. I cannot wait to see you there. I need to get my song back. Okay, ready, everybody? By the way, revisiting this song makes me realize it's so bad. Have an amazing week. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you to Dr. Tali Bogler. Everybody.
Have a good week, everybody. Mwah.